Have you ever wanted something so bad it hurt? We have a story from the Bible today about a woman who really wanted something. Our story begins a long, long time ago. And the woman who we are talking about today is a woman by the name of Hannah. Hannah was married to a man named Elkanah. Elkanah also had another wife named Peninnah. Hannah was his favorite, but Hannah didn't have any children, and sometimes that made her sad. Hannah really wanted to have a child. Every year, Elkanah would take his family up to the temple in Shiloh. They would come to Shiloh, where Eli was the priest, to this place of worship, where they would feel close to God, where they would make sacrifices to God. And where they would celebrate their faith. So each year, Elkanah and Hannah and Peninnah and all of her children would come up to the place of worship to make sacrifices to God. After they sacrificed to God, they would eat from the meat that had been sacrificed. And to each of Peninnah's children and to Peninnah, Elkanah would give a portion of the meat. But he loved Hannah so much. Every year he would give her a double portion. But you know what? That didn't make Hannah feel any better. I wonder if you know what it feels like to want something, to wait for something, to long for something. That's what Hannah felt. And she felt it very intensely when she was around Peninnah's family. Peninnah was mean to her and made fun of her. And Hannah would be so sad. Elkanah saw her tears and said, "Hannah, don't you know that I love you and that you mean more to me than all the children in the world?" But nonetheless, Hannah was hurting. And Hannah went back to the place of worship. And when she went back, Eli the priest was not at the altar, but sitting off to the side, resting himself. Hannah was in tears as she prayed to God and as she talked to God about what was on her heart. Listen to these words from 1 Samuel chapter 1. Hannah says, "O Lord Almighty, if you will only look upon your servant's misery and remember me and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life, and no razor will ever be used on his head." Hannah was promising to set her child apart for God if God would only bless her with a child. Hannah was crying, and she was only praying in her head. Though her lips were moving, no words were coming out. The priest looked at her and thought that perhaps she was drunk and out of her mind because of the way that she was acting. And so he confronted her and said, "Have you been drinking? Why are you here at the altar in this condition?" And Hannah told him, "The only thing that is wrong with me is my broken heart." And he saw in her eyes, and he saw into her heart, and Eli the priest realized how sincerely and earnestly Hannah was longing for a son. So Eli blessed her and told her that indeed God had heard her prayer and that God would bless her with a child. So it came time to go back home, and back to their home they went. Hannah was with Elkanah, and sure enough, the time came that she had a baby. Hannah named her child Samuel, for she realized that he was a gift from God, and she was committed to give her son to God. After a year had passed, it was time for Elkanah to go back to the temple, and Hannah said, I can't go back this time because my baby is too young. But when Samuel is older, I will take him to the priest. And that is exactly what she did. When Samuel had grown big enough to live on his own and to live in the temple with the priest, Hannah took him back and presented him to Eli. I wonder, what have you committed to God lately? I wonder if you could keep such a big commitment to commit your own child to the service of God, even if that meant leaving that child and going back home. That's what Hannah did. She left Samuel to grow up in the temple, to grow up with Eli. And grow up he did. I pray that as your children are growing up, you continue to commit them to the Lord, as I seek to commit my own children to the Lord and my own self to the Lord. And along with Hannah, we close with these words of thanks. Hannah said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. In the Lord, my horn is lifted high. My mouth boasts over my enemies, for I delight in the deliverance of God." May God deliver you this week from your worries, your concerns, and your hopelessness. The Lord be with you.